Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to Matters of Public Importance. I'm yours, Gail Teixeira, Parliamentary Opposition Chief Whip, representing the People's Progressive Party civic members of Parliament and the People's Progressive Party. On this program, we shall bring and focus on matters of public importance and information and discussions on issues and matters that are concerned to you, the Guyanese public, every Thursday between 12:30 and 1:30, right here on Channel 6. And before we get into the program, as usual, I wish to remind you of the telephone numbers you can use to call in the program: 225-0010 and 225-0008. Again, I remind you that I can't answer numbers that are blocked. I must see the numbers on the display here in order to take the call. So just keep that in mind. And as I've informed you in other programs and every program, that the Office of the Leader of the Opposition is open to the public. We're there at 304 Church Street between New Garden and Peter Rose in Queenstown. And we're open from Monday to Saturday. Monday to Friday from 9 to 5:30, and on Saturdays from 9:30 to 1:30 p.m. And so you're welcome to pop in to talk to members that are there, members of the staff that are there. We're there to serve you, whether you voted for us, the PPPC, or for APNU AFC, or you didn't vote at all. You're welcome to come in. We're there to serve you and to try to do our best to help you with advice and with representation. And of course, the number you may wish to use to call in to Church Street is 225-3432. 225-3432. So we're there and we can help you in whatever ways possible. And of course, Freedom Radio continues to broadcast FM 91.1 Demerara, 90.5 Berbice, and 90.7 Essequibo. And the Mirror, the Mirror that the PPP produces and has been the longest political party's newspaper, over 60-odd years, 65 years, we're now going online. So you can register to subscribe. There is no fee attached, and you will be able to meet on the weekend. Regrettably, I forgot, I didn't have today the email address you need to go into in order to register, but this will be coming out online in a week or two. And so this will make it easier for you, particularly those of you who are out of town or even the interior who may have access from time to time with the internet, that you'll be able to receive the Mirror, the weekly Mirror newspaper, in a timely fashion. Well, you know, we've started a new month today, February the 1st, and February is the month of Mashramani and the 48th anniversary of our Republic. And so I'm sure that there are a number of issues that will come up during the month of February to do with these two events. But however, just before the month ended, there were two important developments in the last 2 days of January that we shall focus on. On Tuesday, January the 30th, we learned that the UN Secretary General, Guterres, his name is Antonio Guterres, decided to refer the controversy between Guyana and Venezuela to the International Court of Justice. And this will therefore try to put a rest to the Venezuelan contention that the 1899 Arbiter Award that set the boundaries of Guyana and Venezuela, their contention is that that agreement, that award, was null and void. And so this matter will then go to the ICJ, and will be expensive for both countries. I understand that Venezuela is rejecting this, but as Guyanese, we should welcome the UN Secretary General's decision. Guyana has been looking for peaceful measures and solutions to this border controversy for decades and decades. It's over, 50, 60 years. And so it's been a long road to get to this point of actually, under the Geneva Agreement, that the UN Secretary General has agreed, having tried one last time in 2017, after the former Secretary General of the UN, Ban Ki-moon, had said that after this last tranche, 2017, of trying to find some peaceful solution, that he committed that the matter should go to the ICJ. And so the new Secretary General has gone along with that commitment made by Ban Ki-moon. And so we should be pleased that this matter has gone to the ICJ. However, as Guyanese, the borders are around us, we live close to our neighbors, and therefore we must always work towards peaceful relations with our neighboring Venezuela, Brazil, and Suriname, always, and in particular Venezuela. We have a particular fraternity with the Venezuelan people. They're our neighboring country, and they're a sister Latin American Caribbean country. So you must always try to find peaceful relations and peaceful ways of cooperating outside of what is the issue of the border controversy. Well, the second development, of course, was yesterday, Wednesday, January 31st. The President swore in retired Justice Donald Trotman, a gentleman who I know, who's, I think, bordering on 80 years old, and father of Minister Raphael Trotman. And you know, Minister Raphael Trotman is also the leader of the Alliance for Change, as the sole commissioner in the commission inquiry into the June 2008 Lindo Creek massacre. Now, this move by the government may have caught people by surprise, because earlier statements by the government stated that they were going to go for a mega or a comprehensive commission inquiry into the violence and the criminal violence of the 2002, 2008, or 2010, depending if it's Mr. Granger speaking or Mr. Harman. However, and this is what they promised even a week ago when they went to Lusignan on the Lusignan anniversary of Lusignan massacre. This is where the announcement was made that they were going to announce very shortly the commission of inquiry to go into all these terrible suffering and killings that took place in that period. And then about a day or two before the swearing in, Mr. Harman then pointed out that they would be dealing with various commissions inquiries on different aspects or different incidences or occurrences that took place in that period. So here we have the government swearing in and looking and starting the inquiry into the June 2008 deaths of 8 miners: Dax Arokiam, Cedric Arokiam, Compton Spears, Horace Drakes, Clifton Wong, Lancelot Lee, Bonnie Harry, and Nigel Torres, whose burnt remains were discovered on June the 21st, 2008 at the Lindo Creek mining camp. The PV has made it clear that it has some concerns about the way in which the commission inquiry is being set up. You will remember that on January the 27th, Mr. Jack Dale's leading opposition had stated that we are willing to cooperate and support a commission inquiry into these terrible happenings that took place in the most violent crime wave that Guyana has ever experienced in its history. However, when this announcement was made yesterday and the swearing in, we have some concerns. The commission inquiry has deviated the actual establishment of the commission inquiry in the terms of reference, which we do not know as yet, other than a general statement made by Mr. Harman. We wish to raise with you, for those of you who may not know or may not remember, that in the commission inquiry on Walter Rodney, there were discussions with the opposition with regards to the terms of reference of the assassination of Walter Rodney under President Donald Ramotar. And also in 2012, we had to reach agreement between the opposition led by Mr. Granger and the Ramotar administration on the terms of reference for the Linden disturbances and the commission inquiry that was set up to examine the Linden disturbances, in which there was actually a formal discussions between the two, and where the opposition was very clear what they didn't want to have examined in that commission inquiry on the Linden disturbances. And so this bipartisan manner of going about things has been part of the PPC administration, and you may or may not recall, some of you may be too young actually, that after the 2002 escape from prison, which is what triggered the entire period of 6 years of violence, there was a commission inquiry set up around 2003-2004 to look into what was the claims of the opposition of extrajudicial killings and to examine the disciplined forces of Guyana. That report, that commission inquiry, was set up again in a bipartisan way, in which the opposition actually named a person on the commission and participated fully. And if my memory serves me right, Mr. Granger was part of that commission inquiry. So this is how we do things in the PPP. However, this particular commission inquiry, the very first to be set up under this administration to look at the crime wave of the 2002-2008 period, is not bipartisan. We have not been involved whatsoever. We've not been asked for opinion on anything. We've not been asked to contribute in any way. And in fact, in the selection of a commissioner, one person alone in Justice Donald Trotman, who there's a conflict of interest. This is a man who is the father of a sitting minister, and a minister who is the leader of the AFC, and at the time of 2008 was in the AFC and was involved with a number of occurrences that took place in Buxton prior to him leaving the PNC and going and forming a new party. So there are a number of conflict of interest issues involved in that. So and therefore we are concerned that there seems to be a political objective with regards to this new commission. One, due to the manner in which it's set up in a partisan approach. And therefore, if you really want to get to the truth, if you really want to know what happened, one of the challenges for any government, PPPC or APNU AFC, is it has to try to build trust and confidence in the process, the establishment, the terms of reference, the persons who are going to hear the evidence that people bring forward. This approach by the government is not going to inspire trust and confidence, and therefore I believe that a number of people may be reluctant to come forward. And so we would find it difficult to participate given the nature of this commission's establishment, including the decision to start an inquiry with the incidents at Lindo Creek as opposed to a more comprehensive review of the crime wave. By the way, the terms of reference of any commission of inquiry is supposed to be gazetted in the official gazette, on their website, and in the hard copies that are sent out, because the commission of inquiry is appointed by the president by order under the Commission of Inquiry Act. So it's not a flippant thing. It's a very formal thing that has to be done where there's actually an order signed by the president. I hereby appoint a commission of inquiry to examine the following. Here are the commissioners. These are the terms of reference. And that's what up to this morning has not been posted, at least on the online website. And when I get to my office, I will check to see if the hard copies are out. But it's rather strange that they're appointing someone before the commission has actually officially been appointed in accordance to the law. There are also concerns that we have. In the launching yesterday, in the swearing in yesterday, some comments are made by Mr. Harman that are deeply concerning. And these are his comments. And he says that the commission would have to determine whether any senior officer should be sent on leave during the period of the inquiry. And this was quoted from Damara Waves on January 31st. Since it seems, and why we're concerned about that. You have a commission starting that's supposed to be independent by a man who's respected as a justice, a former retired justice of Guyana, who has been involved with the UN associations and stuff like that for decades. And yet, here is the Minister of State in the Ministry of the Presidency saying that the commission would have to determine whether any senior officer should be sent on leave during the period of inquiry. Isn't that the role of the commission? Isn't that the role of Justice Trotman to make those kind of decisions if he discovers evidence that implicates certain people, to send them home or to send them on leave? Isn't that the role of the commission? The commissions, by the way, are independent body under the Constitution. No one's supposed to interfere with their work. And so it seems as if the AFC APNU is hell-bent on going after the joint services and leaders that do not seem to fall in line with the agenda of this authoritarian government. Minister Harman's statement seems to preempt the actions of the committee, even before it starts its work. And we have seen similar witch hunting of top officials of our security forces following the establishment of the Paul Slow Commission of Inquiry. This was on the intention of persons to, the plan of certain persons to assassinate the president, and the government's interference by letter instructing the Police Service Commission not to proceed with the promotion of senior police officers. And in fact, we've also seen since then a number of officers keep moving around like a checkerboard. They move here and they put them back, and they move this one and move it around, and confusion. So we as a PPP support a commission inquiry. We support a bipartisan approach because what we are supposed to be doing is finding the truth for the benefit of the country, for the victims and families of the victims, and if there are persons who have been implicated who are still alive, then we need to address that in a judicial way, not in a political slander campaign or attack campaign. And we vehemently oppose any attempts to erode the level of professionalism in the Guyana security forces and the undermining of the role and functions of the civilian law enforcement authorities of Guyana. Once the government starts tinkering with that, we are going down a slippery path, my dear friends, my dear viewers. Civilian law enforcement, that's your police, for example, your fire, prison, these are civilian. Army is army. But together, the four bodies make up what is called the Joint Services or the Discipline Forces of Guyana. And so, yes, there are rogue elements. Yes, there are guys who do bad things. Yes, yes. But we want and call for upholding the professionalism of these institutions, and not to have these institutions being whittled away by what seems to be a vindictive political agenda. Now, the other issue that comes up with the commission inquiry, and most people are quite bewildered, is why? Why was the decision made by the government to start with Lindo Creek? Why? And you may recall that in January 2017, a state witness, Dwayne Williams, testified at the Bartica massacre trial. And he very clearly in the trial said that he implicated the Fine Man gang and made clear that that gang was responsible for not only the 2008 massacres at Bartica and Lusignan, but also the killings at Lindo Creek. A position that was made clear by the Guyana Police Force after its investigations, which included DNA sampling with the assistance of our CARICOM sister country, Jamaica. And as you remember, Fine Man, Rondell Rawlins, was killed in a 7-hour-long shootout on August the 28th, 2008, with the police. And so there is also a statement in the newspapers around July last year, if my memory is correct, by one of the senior police officers that they have been asked to look for specifics. Go back, and he said the Lindo Creek massacre the file has never been closed. However, as far as the police knows, most of the persons involved with that, or thought to be involved with that, had died. And therefore, they were then asked to go back into the files and look for certain specifics. He didn't name it at the time, but this was reported in one of the newspapers. So, you just had Lusignan anniversary a few days ago. Bartica will be coming up. Massacre anniversary will be coming up. Why would you not look at those? Where 5 children and innocent adults were killed in both. Why would you start with Lindo Creek? It's an odd position. I'm not saying that the massacre in Lindo Creek wasn't horrendous. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be examined. I'm not saying that. And the truth must out. But that, from a, how do you say, humanitarian, or why would you not start with the massacres of these children? Because you just had an anniversary a few days ago where mothers said they're grieving. They're still grieving. They've lost their children, lost their partners, lost their sons. So it's inexplicable. However, the truth may come out a little bit more, and I'll come back to that. Because in 2008, the People's National Congress, on July the 8th, 2008, remember the massacre happened around, they say around June 8th, 9th, but the bodies were only discovered around June 21st. So here's a PNC press statement that's on their website up to now, July 8, 2008. And this is what it says, and I'm quoting from it. The Lusignan and Boudica massacres were not situations in which the security forces were accused of massacring citizens of this republic. This is the first nonsense that the PNC must reject. So this is what they said in 2008, that the distinction between these massacres was that Lindo Creek, they believed that it was security forces who were involved. When we go to 2012, Mr. Granger, as a leader of opposition, brings a motion, submits it October 22nd, and it's put on the order paper for December 24th, the eve of Christmas. Something about Christmas and these people. Like, they like to give people heartaches at Christmas and end of the year, like the firing of the sugar workers. But anyway, he brought a motion for the appointment of a commission inquiry to investigate the incident of criminal violence from 2004 to 2010 in Guyana. And he called for that first the National Assembly condemns the killing of the citizens, and it goes on to say, the National Assembly calls on the President of Guyana, in accordance with the Commission Inquiry Act, to appoint a commission inquiry to inquire into the lawful killing of citizens during the years 2004 to 2010. In the text of the motion, he goes on to talk about, and whereas several of these killings have been of a deliberate and systematic nature, particularly those that occurred at Agricola, Boudica, Buxton, Eccles, Lindo Creek, Lusignan, Bel Air, Border, and Kitty and Georgetown, which can be classified as massacres and have engendered alarm and despondency among the population. So this is brought to the House. The opposition, the government, that's us in government, makes amendments to it. And what we do is we call for the President to establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in order to provide a forum for the disclosure of truth and to provide an opportunity for the families of the victims and persons with information to come forward and to call before it persons who were involved and inquire into the unlawful killings of citizens during the years 1973 to 2010, a 40-year period. We also posed some rather important questions. We went further, that the President consider including in the terms of reference of the Truth Commission the following: what were the connections between certain media houses and the criminal gangs? Why were the videotapes removed from the Buxton gas station by the present chairman of the AFC, Mr. Nigel Hughes, after a killing spree? What were the linkages between the then Commissioner of Police, Mr. Felix, and the then Chief of Staff, Eddie Collins, during the violent crime wave with the criminal gangs and leaders of the PNC, in particular former leader of the opposition, Mr. Corbyn, Mr. Basil Williams, and Mr. Ronald Waddell, Roger Kahn, and Feynman Rawlings? Why was there a cover-up of the assassination of the 1973 ballot box martyrs, Father Dark and Dr. Rodney? What were the linkages between the then leading opposition and the criminal gangs who occupied Buxton? What was the role of former PNC MP Abdul Qadir, now a convicted terrorist in the United States, with criminal gangs occupying Buxton? The Speaker at the time, and so we went for an enlarged from 1973 to what would be 2010. We felt that there was much people knew but were afraid to come forward to say, and that a commission inquiry may not be the only avenue to do this, or the sole way to deal with this, but a truth commission, something like what South Africa had and other countries have had in situations like this. The Speaker of the House at the time, by the way, the person who co-signed the motion with Mr. Granger was Mr. Winston Felix, who was a co-signer as a Member of Parliament for the APNU in that 9th Parliament. Our amendments went to the Speaker of the House, who was Mr. Raphael Trotman. See the connections again? And who did not allow our motion, our amendments. And we had all our speakers lined up to speak, of course. And so he ruled, and there's an actual ruling by Mr. Trotman, the Speaker, not allowing the amendments to go forward. And after that, the motion is asterisked, which means it's not to be proceeded with from that period right until the dissolution of Parliament in 2015. For some reason, in that motion, there seems to be an aversion to deal with the 2002 jailbreak that actually triggered, or at least one marks that as the beginning of the most violent crime wave of Guyana. And so we have, the PNC seems to be reluctant to deal with this. We believe that that we need in any commission of inquiry, as we did with Walter Rodney, as we did with the Linden disturbances, we brought in international experts, people who were judges and lawyers of integrity, of people who were highly respected in the region and who people could trust. The Walter Rodney Commission, as you know, was abruptly concluded. The government, when it came in, refused to give the commission more time because it had a list of people that they needed to either call back in or who had not responded to their request to come in and who they wanted to interview. So we make it very clear, you know. Now we have, for example, Newsroom comes out with a big headline. Newsroom comes out with a big headline that says PPP backs down from participating in Linden Creek COI. This is last evening. What we said that we find it difficult to participate in the commission inquiry because it has deviated from the way in which we have had bipartisan approaches to commission's inquiry. It deviates from the issue of international or extra-regional persons or extraterritorial persons. We have no beef personally with Mr. Trotman, Justice Trotman. We have no personal beef with him. We do not wish to attack him. But we feel that the government is highly insensitive to appoint a man who is the father of a sitting minister, who also happens to be a person who was very busy in Buxton during the crime wave. We know that. We know that. So what is really going on? How do you imbue trust? How do you imbue participation? How do you imbue, unless one believes that this is a political agenda? And as I believe it's the president, if I'm wrong, I apologize, but it is that yesterday, what came out from the, Department of Public Information, and the government's news arm, is that Mr. Granger appears to believe, in the words he uses, that in having this commission inquiry in Lindo Creek, that this is the linchpin for the APNU AFC. This particular massacre is a linchpin which, from their point of view, will unravel all the other massacres and crime wave in the country. For those of us who were in government at the time, we failed to see this connection. And as I said, the one witness who gave evidence for the state, the prosecution, pointed out that he was at the age of 15 years old when Bartica and Lusignan and Lindo Creek, and he was there, and he gave evidence. So, and I hope that he is being very carefully and safely taken care of. And I hope that with the witness protection bill that has been brought in, hasn't been assented to by the president yet, that this young man will be given witness protection at the highest level. As I said, this move by the government, as I said earlier, it's bewildering. But it isn't that bewildering if you think that, if you consider that in fact there is an agenda, a target, and in fact the government seems to be coming to the conclusion of the commission before it even starts its work. Because it clearly is said, security forces involved. It has taken that line from 2008. It has taken that line in the motion of 2012 by Mr. Granger. It has taken that line consistently up to yesterday, where both Harman is talking about senior officers of security forces may have to go home, may have to be sent on leave, and then even the president's own comments that imply that this is the linchpin, that the security people were involved in these massacres, and therefore this will unravel and allow for the other crime wave and massacres to be rationalized and to be understood. However, this is all being said on the eve and at the time of Justice Trotman's swearing in as the sole commissioner. Now, I notice after the disturbances, the government seems to be reluctant to have multi-member commissions of inquiry. So they've had a few. That Sugar, which had a number of people, the ancestral lands had a couple of people, but they've also set up several that are one-man show. Paul Slow on the commission of inquiry. There was another one to do with drugs, one person. The ones to do with the Yupakari aircraft, one person, Eddie Collins, for example, and so on and so forth. So of the 16 or so commissions of inquiries that have been held, including the, the Sophia, the Children's Care Center, under the children CCPA, the children's home that was burnt and children died. That's also a one woman who headed that commission of inquiry, and the majority of these persons are ex-GDF or ex-police in a number of cases who are heading these. I assume that any government must be conscious and cannot be reckless and irresponsible in creating an atmosphere that defies trust in the security forces. Because they've never come with evidence, 2008 to now, other than these broad statements, one of which I just read to you. Other statements to do with Dr. Leslie Ramsamy, and they're raising the interception devices and stuff, which is not 2008. That goes back long ago, and that case was dismissed. Other than revving up and digging up these skeletons, and of course the target, Jagdeo, and the language that Mr. President uses in relation to the assassination of Sashsar is rather unusual for a president, And if one reads the sentence, and I encourage you to read the sentence again as published by the DPI, it has a double innuendo, which is very disturbing, and we will deal with that another day. But to recklessly go after your security forces in a situation where any government has to rely for peace, for public safety, on those same security forces. Unless the government has not forgiven that the discipline forces of this country, discipline services of this country, from 1992 to 2015, were loyal to Guyana, the flag of Guyana, and had a professional relationship with the government of the day, the PPC. Because you have to remember, those of you who are younger, that in the days of the PNC, pre-92, Camp Ghana and the GDF headquarters had the PNC flag and the Guyana flag. The law courts of our country had the PNC flag and the Guyana flag. And there's evidence to show, if you go back in old newspapers, that the army swore allegiance to the PNC, not to the president, not to the commander-in-chief, but to the PNC. The police too headquarters, if you drove by at Eve Leary in those days, you would see the PNC flag up. 1992 was a radical shift in that the army, the police, the fire, and the prisons did not have to swear allegiance to the People's Progressive Party civic in government, did not have to put up the PPP flag on official buildings, but were asked to be professional in upholding public safety and defending our sovereignty, our territorial sovereignty. And maybe, this is just my speculation, I could be off the wall in this, that somewhere in the leaders of the People's National Congress, the leaders of the APNU, and the leaders of the AFC, because they all came out of, other than Ramjatan and Moses who came out from the PUP, the rest came out from the PNC, that there's this vindictiveness to punish those police and GDF officers who are loyal to serve the nation and the government of the day. And one day, the experience of all of us in the attempts many times to undermine the PPC and government, even up to 2006, with the involvement of the top people in the army and the police, attempting to remove the PPP government by violence leading up to the 2006 elections. And we know the PNC names that were involved in all of that. So what is this about the focus on security forces? Are they trying to distract from Ronald Rawlings and what they were doing, the gangs were doing from 2002 on? Is it a distraction? Is it a distraction? So let's focus on the security guys, not what was called the criminal gangs, and they got the name of Buxton Gang. They weren't all from Buxton. They weren't all located in Buxton. We know that. And we know who the political operatives were, who were constantly going in, sending in supplies, giving sustenance, and other necessities that the gangs needed. And so, this issue, any government in a democratic framework, see, if you're in a authoritarian framework, government wants to control everything, everywhere, and wants to put its control into judiciary, legislature, executive, and what's called the coercive arm of the state, the security forces. Then maybe this is the way you do it if you're authoritarian. And we believe very strongly that this government is moving in an authoritarian direction. We have no doubt about that. But if you're a democratic nation and a democratic government, one does not go out there publicly and castigate and intimidate your security forces and try to stop their promotion, try through a commission of inquiry by another member of the police force, former member, to apparently go after certain people in the security in the police. You know, as I said, the police in this country have a very, you know, they a colored past in the sense and presence. But one thing I can say about the police of Guyana is that in times of need, and when it was really necessary for them to uphold the Constitution of this Guyana and to uphold democracy in Guyana, they did it. They did it. Under duress, under assaults, under attack. The day-to-day mischief makers and rogue elements and those who want to bribe and those who have been charged with rape and fraud and all these things. These are maybe not your majority of your police force. They give the police a bad name, and if they do wrong things, they must be found, put before the courts, and the courts must rule in regard to whether they're guilty or not. The judicial process is what holds us up as a country from what is anarchy and what is some level of stability. And that is why the PPP keeps referring to the judiciary and the attempts to intimidate the judiciary, the attempt to control. For example, let me just deviate a minute. Mr. Arif Bulkan, a man who is a human rights lawyer, who is a man who's highly respected in the Caribbean, Guyanese, brother, I believe, of the Minister of Communities, Mr. Bulkan, has been appointed as a temporary judge. Good choice. He's a good man. But there's a problem. The Judicial Service Commission by the Constitution of Guyana is the body, that says to the President, here are names that we're proposing to be judges. The President, if he has a problem with any of them, he sends back to the Judicial Service Commission in writing what his concerns are. The Judicial Service Commission, which is appointed through a parliamentary and constitutional process, independent of the President, will then look at the President's views and could come back and say, yes, we agree with your views, we've investigated. Or, sir, we've investigated, and the grounds on which you don't want to appoint this judge, we cannot substantiate. Therefore, we call on you to appoint this judge. The problem with the Arif Bulkan appointment is the Judicial Service Commission, its life expired in the first week of September 2017. So there's no Judicial Service Commission to recommend to the President an appointment, even a temporary appointment. And so, you know, it's also interesting, why wouldn't they put Arif Bulkan as one of the people on this commission inquiry that they now launched yesterday, you know? And Arif Bulkan, by the way, was one of the names, one of the persons we approached to submit his name as a nominee to the President be chairman of GCOM. Unfortunately, he was not available, and so we proceeded. So these incursions, these whittling away of what are laws, constitution, political practices and conventions must not be taken lightly. The PPP as a party is not afraid to go before any commission of inquiry. We went before the Walter Rodney one. Many of our leaders went before the Walter Rodney Commission, as did others. And so, but the government must understand that setting up a commission, no bipartisanship, setting up one commissioner alone who happens to be biologically connected to a minister and the government and a party, all of which are interlinked with the crime wave, is unacceptable. And what is befuddling is why would this government not use the opportunity available to it to have bipartisanship? Remember, I started this program by talking about the border and the decision of the UN Secretary General. Do you know that the only space that there's any area of bipartisan cooperation, officially, formally, is in the issue of the border controversy with Venezuela, where the PPP's representative, me, sits on that ministerial advisory committee on the border controversy with Venezuela. That's the only overture they've made to us, and we have responded. And out of that has come a certain, why? Why not, you should say? Because this is our territory. This is our territorial integrity. It's a national issue. It's a national issue. It is not a partisan issue. The crime wave of that era, is one that concerns all of us. And so today we're going to open the phone lines. Let's see if anybody's calling in. Anybody has any views on these developments today or any others, so that we can see what the mood is like out there. You remember for the last all of January, we've been talking about sugar. Today we're switching as we enter February into these other areas now. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon.
I want to know why they commented on the inquiry. The inquiry could have done years ago because you was in power, so the inquiry could have done before. So why when inquiry come up now? Why so much of, nagging and telling people something as a put something as a blue brain? People think about something else. It shouldn't be that way. There's a lot of people die,
Of course.
So I don't think you should ever make a packet over it. Let it inquiry just go through and go come out of it. Who got to go to jail, go to jail. I want the inquiry come out. When it's finished, somebody must go to jail. Then you feel happy. Don't make an inquiry and then when the inquiry done, nobody goes to jail. It doesn't make no sense at all.
Well, an inquiry doesn't send anyone to jail, by the way. The commission inquiry doesn't have the power to send anyone to jail. So don't have delusions about that. Just like the Walter Rodney one came out with recommendations and views, but the government hasn't implemented any of them. Commission's inquiry don't have the power to send anybody to jail, so don't have a delusion on that. The issue is that we are prepared to go before. We are not backing down from any commission inquiry, but we have the right to point out to people that bipartisanship approach to the terms of reference has been abandoned by the government, and why? And secondly, why would you have a commissioner, sole commissioner, who is a conflict of interest? How do you build confidence in the outcome? For any commission inquiry, it's not just setting up a body. Process must be one in which anybody going before it feels they have confidence that they will be protected, that they have a right to speak, and that what they say will not be used against them and kill them. And in addition to that, they must have confidence that the process will not be skewed against them. And so commission inquiries, we saw the disturbances in Linden. There's this agreement between the government, PPPC government, and the APNU and the AFC that they wanted international commission inquiry. We got one. We had bipartisan terms of reference. They got that. Money was spent to bring these people in at high costs. And the opposition agreed that they would abide by whatever the Commission of Inquiry found. As soon as the Commission Inquiry report was complete and submitted, the opposition, go back in the records, APNO, AFC, dissed the whole thing, refused to accept the recommendations, and what they recommended, what they saw, etc. Because what they wanted was people's heads. And Commission inquiries don't give you people's heads necessarily. So, yes, there's much we could do, and much we could have done. But if we were looking for bipartisanship, which is what we were looking for, up to 2012 even, with Mr. Granger's motion in Parliament, which Mr. Granger refused to have amended. It was either their way or no way. And we're seeing that come to light yesterday. Their way or no way. Okay, let's go to the next caller. Good afternoon, welcome.
Good morning, Madam I really think they should investigate Tika death too, you know.
Yes.
You got people still alive who know about the story. And we got a historic president, according to Hamilton Green.
Yeah.
So he spent a part of his lives in the army. Nobody knows what Bonham did and how he did. Why would all those people did?
Yes, thank you. In fact, when we amended Mr. Granger's motion in 2012, we had inserted Minister Tika's assassination as well. So that in fact, there are two ministers of Guyana that were assassinated. One was Minister Tika, who was a PPP member who crossed the floor and became a minister in the PNC government, who was later killed. And of course, Minister Sashsaw, PPP member, who was a member of cabinet, who was assassinated along with security guards and his brother and sister. And so these are issues that need to be examined, and the issue of a commission inquiry, the matter of Sashsaw went to court. Persons were charged. One man was, after the various shootouts, one man was charged. And the case was going on at Supanam up to, what was it, 2011, 2012? And then the man mysteriously died in public hospital, mysteriously. And that requires a coroner's inquest as well. So it's like, you know, peeling back an onion, the layers and the layers. Sometimes commission inquiries don't always come right away when things happen. Look at Walter Rodney. He was assassinated in 1980. The attempts to have the inquiry went on for years and years and years. Of course, during the PNC, they never would have had one. They had a cover-up thing, which no one's even seen that report. And then finally in 2012. And so we have a lot to say on these issues, and we believe the inquiry needs to be totally independent of any interference of government and of the opposition, of anybody, so that it can find the truth. Commission's inquiry about finding truth. Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Pleasant good afternoon.
Yes, could you talk a bit louder? I can hardly hear you.
Pleasant good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Oh yeah, don't set up an inquiry for Mr. Waddle there too.
Yeah, that was on the list. That was on the list too. And that is what the PNC has been raising all the time, and they haven't set one up either.
Yeah, because we need an inquiry for Mr. Waddle.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, let's see. More calls? Again, I need a number. I can't take one that has no number. We have a few minutes left. So these issues are unfolding, you know, because I want to be able, and another program, for us to discuss a number of the issues that are going on in the country. We have discussed for the whole month of January, except, well, this is now February, sugar, and what's happening in sugar. And so now we're starting now a new number of issues, but sugar isn't going to go away. Sugar, I'm sure, is going to come back up, because remember, in the last program, I referred to the announcement by Gail Teixeira that 957 more workers are going, and 300 are going by yesterday. So sugar's going nowhere. It's not going to disappear. It is there, and the workers are hurting, and their families are hurting, and the society, nation will suffer. Last call. You have to be brief. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this same past law that Yalbam based in, right? You could remember past law when the government used to use past law to shoot down nurses and protesters down King and Regent Street.
Who?
The same past law.
Paul Slow.
Yalbam based in now that the same PPP government used to use past law to
Who
shoot down
lambase Paul
nurses,
Slow? Who lambase?
and down Regent and Camp Street. You can remember those days?
Yes, I can. And I will answer you. Thank you. Because I've got 2 minutes left. And so we could continue the dialogue on that issue. A policeman at a senior level is caught in a situation where there's a riotous crowd. Breaking into places, running with petrol cans. There's video evidence to show. And setting places on fire. Beating people, innocent people, ripping their clothes from their bodies. And yes, the senior officer is required to make decisions on the spot, in regard to public safety, and so those decisions a senior policeman will make, whether it's Paul Slow or whether it was Felix or whoever it was. The criticism of Paul Slow has nothing to do with that. It is the commission and what was the purpose of the commission that he headed. And it is then discovered that Paul Slow seems to have some difficulties with some of his former colleagues. As a former Minister of Health, I had no Home Affairs. I had no idea that there were some personal issues involved there. But the agenda of the commission inquiry was particular to get at senior members of the police force. Whether he's a conduit to that, I don't know. But no one's carrying on an attack about Paul Slow. Okay, so we got to close. We can't avoid the stark reality, my friends, as we close. The country is in trouble and on a downward path. The economy is in trouble. We're seeing violations of the constitutional provisions of enormous proportions not seen before. We have lack of transparency, lack of accountability, and growing corruption. I could name, as we've done in this program, 54 cases of corruption that we found in 32 months. So we will continue. We will continue to expose this government, as they did us, as every opposition does to government if they're going the wrong way. And this government is going the wrong way on many, many, many issues that are not hurting the PPP, they're hurting this nation. And by hurting the nation, they also hurt us. But we're going in a direction of an authoritarian state. And we better watch very carefully what that means. We experienced that in the 1970s and 80s. But let me say this. An authoritarian state under Mr. Granger administration will make Burnham's era of authoritarianism pale in significance. So, have a blessed week that you're coming to. Have a lovely weekend. Don't drink and drive, as I always say. And we'll meet back here, right, on the Matters of Public Importance on next Thursday, 12:30 to 1:30. And struggle we shall, and silent we shall not be. Silence is the greatest enemy to democracy. Silence makes those in power think they can get away with anything. Silence helps those who want more control and less democracy, those who want to move this country to a police state. And at the next elections, the people will make their votes count again, and there will be a change. And we in the PPC government shall have to start all over again, as in the 1992, to reconstruct, to put this economy back on a firm and stable footing, and restore the programs which helped the poor and vulnerable and those at risk, and restore the independence of the judiciary and legislature from executive interference. I bid you all good afternoon. Stay safe. Remember, and we'll see each other next week, right here at the same time. Thank you. Bye-bye.